We have an interesting fellow who I believe you'd like to meet. His name is James Chan. James, welcome to Money Matters.
Thank you. Good to
This
be here.
guy is an interesting fellow. You're going to see in a few minutes. But I think I should tell you up front, he's single. He's a PhD, but he doesn't brag about it. But you've got a lot to offer, what am I saying, James? And the question is here that James is a Chinese American. But what do you hear what he has to say? Your company is Asia Marketing and Management. Not Asian, but Asia, like the continent, right?
Correct.
Now, what do you do exactly? What does that mean to the viewing public?
Well, in 3 words, I help American companies sell 100% American-made products and services to the Chinese market.
Oh, my.
And that includes not just the big China, but Hong Kong, Taiwan, and places where you see Chinese.
Wow. Now, what kind of products are you talking about?
Oh, it runs the whole gamut, anywhere from extremely sophisticated, precision engineered bearings for nuclear power plants to scientific databases, you know, to standards, industrial standards, their documents, to recycled copper ingots to Pennsylvania, hardwood, cherry lumber, you name it.
When you say that you help them sell in China,
Right.
are you the marketing specialist for them, or what is your capacity when you visit them? And I guess you must have a very large portfolio that you take over there, right?
Well, essentially, I began. Can I take a step back and
please,
talk
yes,
about
please
my
do,
origins? After I had gotten my PhD from Michigan, Ann Arbor, in 1977. I used to be a college professor.
Oh, were you really?
Yeah. My first place was Boston University.
No
That's
kidding.
when I bought my first TV set. I had enough money, a few dollars. But I worked for a Fortune 500 publishing company, Harcourt Brace Jovanovic, in New York City. And that's how I learned how to sell very high-level scientific, technical, medical books and journals to China. And I started succeeding in promoting. And when the company decided to go to Florida, and I decided that I really wanted to stay in the Northeast for personal reasons, so I set up my consulting practice. And what I do, to answer your question, is I'm a marketing strategist to help American companies. We call them the exporters, who have unique products and services or know-how or procedures or a management system to export, to promote 100% American products and services to the Chinese market. And I succeeded enough time to know that I can do it, and so I coach people, essentially coaching people and helping their star salesmen to be performing even better.
That's unique.
That is. That really is.
My goodness. I got a couple of questions to answer.
Yes.
To ask you. Why should we care about China or our doing business there, other than it's a huge, big population, a big market? That's a good enough reason.
Bill, you know, it's so basic a question.
Yes.
The only way to really answer is when I first came to this country from Hong Kong in 1971 to do my graduate work. It was almost impossible to read in the New York Times or Wall Street Journal an article about China. Like America could essentially afford to ignore China. But now, 30 years later, 30-some years later, you know, China is next door. China is really our biggest investor. Like we owe the Chinese $900 billion mostly in treasuries. And so many American companies are settled in China. Really, it's almost impossible to ignore it.
But 30 years ago, since then, a lot of things have happened in China too, haven't they?
Oh yes.
That makes it more entrepreneurial and more like marketing in America would be.
In 1982, that was the first time I went to China. China had nothing.
Really?
Nothing. It was, I don't even remember if China had $5 billion, that much. Right now, China had close to $2 trillion, which is 2,000 billion US dollars. So in just one generation, it's been night and day.
Yeah. You know, it seems like everything's made in China. I mean, how is it that we're that competitive? Because remember, it costs us more to make products, et cetera. What is it that draws China's attention to the U.S. market, so to speak?
Well, it's true that a lot of things are made in China, but don't forget, easily anywhere from 35% to 50% of the manufacturing that is taking place in China is actually financed by American,
Is that so?
European, Japanese, Taiwanese, Hong Kong companies.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a way they're making things that are making use of the relatively reasonable, if not in fact sometimes cheap, not that cheap anymore, labor wages in China. But then there are America, believe it or not, has still a lot of stuff, even if you count all the engineer products that are very high tech, that are very sophisticated, or that have a very high level of craftsmanship that the Chinese still desire. They desire and they buy a lot.
Are there patent laws that protect international products in China, or can they just be copied and then all of a sudden it's gone, so to speak?
The laws are there in China, the patent laws are there, copyright laws are there, and they are getting more and more sophisticated and more enforceable. But essentially, China started out from zero without those laws, and it's going to take many years for the psyche of a people to really change into a more international American way. I normally joke, and don't take it as an offense that if you fly your grandmother to China, she'll come back in 10 40-foot containers. I mean, and also, yes, there are a lot of pirates in China, but the piracy is really not limited to Chinese pirating other nations' products. If you are a Chinese company and you invent a new product, and if it works, I mean, if you make a lot of money and people know about that, your neighbors are going to pirate. Your wife's husband's, your wife's nephew's daughter might pirate you. So it's free market here.
Free market, yeah, that's
Piracy
what I thought.
is equal opportunity.
That's what I thought,
I was
too.
going to ask you that. 40 or 50 years ago, China was a very aggressive communistic country,
Yes.
and they were a threat to America and to the free world.
Yes.
Is China still a threat, or is it more of an opportunity? You just mentioned that word a few minutes ago.
It's both.
Is it
It
really?
really is both. I think that China is a threat as long as the U.S. Believes that some of the industries are going to become less competitive. If we don't beef up ourselves, then it is a threat.
Yes.
But at the same time, I mean, so many companies, so many people, so many even money people have made so much money in China, you can't deny it is also an opportunity. So it's kind of yin-yang, day and night. It's both.
Very, very interesting.
The seat of economic power
Right.
is Hong Kong.
Not. Oh, I have to be very careful. This can be a loaded question, depending on who is listening.
I didn't know I was that sharp.
I would say maybe in the 70s, maybe in the early 80s, and maybe to some extent depends on what area of finance you're talking about, mergers and acquisition. Maybe it is still Hong Kong.
I understand.
But now China is getting important. Shanghai is becoming very important. And in fact, the northern city, I'm glad you asked this question, the northern city of China, Tianjin, Tianjin, Tianjin is a port city, which is also a sister city of Philadelphia, is actually going to be the northern capital of private equity because of a local client of mine, Mid-Market Capital. Patrick Hurley is the managing director, has developed contacts to help with the Tianjin city government, to help Tianjin city turn into northern China's private equity capital. So in a way to answer, I know this is a very long answer, but it's kind of moving from Hong Kong into Shanghai, and then now it's going to northern China. So it's spreading. It's spreading out.
Now, when you came to America, were you able to speak English at that time? Did you learn English in China, or did you learn it when you were here?
I grew up. I was born in Canton, and now it's called Guangzhou in 1949.
Okay.
August 3rd. I'm a Leo. But I grew up immediately after I was born. My mother went to Hong Kong. Literally, they fled to Hong Kong. So I grew up in Hong Kong. When I came to America in 1971, I already speak English because I went to the University of Hong Kong. I got my bachelor's degree at the university.
In
and
what?
it was a British in geography.
Geography.
It was a British school, so my accent at that time was quite British. I would say half the class passed the test. But I went to Chicago and I got my master's degree, and very quickly I adopted the Midwestern, half the class passed the test.
That's funny. That's really funny.
Or half the class passed the test?
Pass the test.
I think that learning a PhD in a foreign language is difficult, but it wasn't so foreign to you, was it?
No, it wasn't. And I was determined. I wanted a PhD even when I was a teenager.
Congratulations, that's good.
Thank
And
you.
do you recommend that we teach our children Chinese or have them start to learn Chinese?
I don't think one has to teach everybody Chinese, but I think given the fact that China is growing in importance, economically,
yes,
financially, manufacturing-wise, I think it is good to encourage people who are fascinated with China to learn the language, because really America needs somebody meaning however tiny a segment of the American population to be able to explain China to our people. And as much as for the Chinese to explain China to America, we need that category of people.
Unfortunately, the Mexico and southern and the South American countries are close enough to America. A lot of Spanish immigrating, legal and illegal, into America, and so many of the southern states are becoming second language states. So it's either Spanish or English, one or the other.
Right.
Now, if China lived that or locate that close to America, we'd probably be using more of Chinese too.
Well, but Bill, China is actually closer than you think.
Oh.
Think California. There are so many of them right now.
That's
Are
right,
there really?
that's true.
Oh,
Who
yeah.
have moved from China to America? and
Oh,
living
well,
in
Southern California
Is that so?
Oh, yes.
Well, that's true. A lot of other Asian countries, too, coming to America.
Correct.
But even though the Asian countries, there's different languages, but there's Chinese people coming to America, like you did, to seek their fortune here and
Oh, yeah,
enjoy what we
yeah.
have to do here in America.
And many of them are actually returning because they consider that there are more opportunities
They
there.
get educated here and take it back to China.
Sure.
You created an acronym or something called CHINA, China. What does that mean, James? Can I ask you that?
Yes, after 25 years of working with executives, engineers, professionals, salespeople in America, kind of coaching them how to sell American-made products, I said, hey, there must be a very easy way to remember how to do it well.
Yes.
And so I said, what better method than to come up with a word like China, CHINA, and to kind of treat it as a formula to sell American-made products to China. And so I said C for confidence. C is, in other words, China is an acronym.
Very good.
C is for confidence. If you have confidence in what you are selling, you tend to succeed. And not only that, if you are an American company wanting to sell anything to the Chinese, it's not enough that you have confidence in your own product or service. You have to make the people whom you hire confident that your stuff can work. Now, H for hunger. American companies, be they in finance or hardcore manufacturing, they have to feel that they really are hungry to want to sell to the Chinese market. American companies that are fat and happy will never do anything. So
I agree.
it's the hungry people.
Yeah.
Hungry doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. They're just hungry. They're motivated. And also, we don't sell to everybody in China. We only sell to people in China who are hungry for our kinds of products.
Very good.
I, for insiders. China is such an old civilization.
Yes.
Most of the things that are on the table, they're not fake, they're not untrue, but on the other hand, without insiders tipping you off, you will go nowhere.
I see.
So the trick of succeeding in selling to the Chinese market is to develop people who trust you, who work with you, who like you, whom you can trust. And they will tip you off.
Okay.
So you need those insiders.
Very good.
The next one, N,
Yes.
is ironically to succeed in a big way in China, you have to have the courage and the timing to say to some customers the word no. You have to be willing to reject certain people who are pushing you too hard, whether or not it's about price or about trying to get more. in and trying to not pay you or even pirate your product. If you are unable to say no, they don't think you are the real McCoy.
I see. I see.
Oh,
That's the trick of
Very
no.
very interesting.
Finally, acceptance, which is my favorite. That's the A part. There are two meanings to acceptance. What the Chinese people really care about in terms of the West and especially America is acceptance by America of themselves. 150 years of pretty bad Chinese history in the past. So people who want to succeed in China should go in not looking like, you know, you want to do a quick killing, but you actually accept the people, and if they don't view you, and don't get me wrong when I use this word, if they don't view you as a marauder,
Yes.
as a raider, as a barbarian, so to
Yes,
speak,
yes.
then it's easier to find the insiders who can
Yes.
tip you off.
Yes.
One more thing about acceptance. I think people, American people, need to accept the Chinese as they are. There's no way we can change China. In fact, if you make the Chinese people feel that you are trying to change them, to brainwash them, to turn them into Americans, they'll start fighting us.
I understand.
Not a good strategy at all. That's what I mean by China.
Well, that China would be good whether you're selling something in China or anywhere in the world.
That's right.
Oh,
If you're
yeah.
selling next
That's right.
door, that-
Yeah.
That's a good acronym for
Yeah.
whatever you're selling to anybody.
In fact, I gave a talk which is based on this, and I uploaded it on YouTube, and I got so many good comments
Did you really?
everywhere. Yeah. But it's for 25 years,
Is there?
in 5 letters.
Well, listen, you compressed it down into just a beautiful idea and concept. It works. I'm
It's
sure it
not
does.
easy.
Right.
It's easy to understand. It's
Yeah.
not easy to practice.
What kind of resistance do you get when you bring a new person over to China to show them, have them show that China his wares? Do you sometimes get resistance by saying, I just don't like the way that person looks or acts?
Oh, well, with the first resistance actually is about price. So I think this is something everybody should keep in mind. The fact that if people say to you your price is too high, you just ignore it. You just simply have to ignore it because that's really the first, it's like the first way they will talk to you as part of a negotiation ploy. But in terms of your kind of resistance, I think most people really don't resist. They're curious about American technology, about the American management system, about the ways, the norms, including how we develop the regulatory system. In fact, the Chinese are more curious about how we do things than we believe.
Do you sell automobiles made in America to China?
I have not had an automobile client, but some of my clients supply to the auto companies. They supply parts and components
Because
that
they-
go into the auto.
Because they
the
make
automobile.
automobiles in China too.
Oh, yes, yes. But the answer is yes,
Yes.
but not the whole automobile.
I understand. I understand.
Now, the new generation that's coming up is obviously leagues different ahead, educationally wise. I don't know about emotionally and all. How do you find that you're going to be able to fit into that group as opposed to the group that you're more familiar with? Because there's a big difference between the two, the older and the younger Chinese.
I have to count on one of those ever unending things that are so truthful with China. Truthful meaning the Chinese buy into it and it's not going to be changed. They still respect age.
Oh, good.
I think it's the white hair.
I'm glad to hear that.
I'm not saying that young people who are intelligent, competitive, gung-ho, the A-type, don't see me as a threat or as somebody in the way, but I ever so skillfully and diplomatically show them my gray hair, and I do get some respect.
Oh, that's good. That's
well, you
good.
have to use it the right way.
That's right, exactly. There's a dear friend of mine, I haven't seen him for a while, was born in China and raised in China and came over to America and became a practicing physician.
Yes.
He's taken that back with his family, back to China, lives there, and teaching some medical courses in China.
Right.
And I get an email from him regularly what he's doing back there, how it's working. I still think he's an American, but he goes back and forth. But mostly he spends time in China.
Oh, yeah. We, one thing before I forget, when I first went to China in 1982, there were only 19 PhDs
Oh, yeah.
Now China graduates as many PhDs as we do here, 50,000.
Oh, that's wonderful.
My goodness.
That's wonderful.
You mentioned earlier about getting used to the Chinese and they're getting used to us. And I've only met a dozen Chinese people in my life, and you're one of the most charming, educated, and vocal that I've ever met. They're usually very shy and retiring, but you're very, not aggressive, but you're very easy to talk to. Don't you think he is?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Pleasure having you on.
Yeah, you've got so many activities that we all wish we could enjoy with you. We're so glad to have you, James. You're a charming man. I can say a charming young man, and we're so glad you're here.